Brilliant. Thank you everyone for joining today. Today's topic is all around learning lessons from Heathrow and just thinking about interdependencies and the system that we all operate within, and particularly focusing a little bit on the concepts. Oh, okay. Can everyone see my presentation? Or can everyone else see my presentation? Not Sandra. Ailish, you can.
I can see yes, it looks like a header page, 1 of 10.
Yeah.
I see I can't display presentation.
Um,
Can you send it in the chat and we can open it manually ourselves, or those that can't see it?
Give me 1 second. What I will just try and do is
Stop the recording.
no, I was going to just stop sharing and reshare.
Okay.
And let me try that.
Yeah, I can see it now.
Andrew, perfect. Can everyone else still see it?
Yep.
Brilliant. I was sharing within Teams, and sometimes that doesn't work. Yeah. Okay. So today's session, as I say, is this month's topic is around learning what we can from Heathrow, thinking about interdependencies, and just thinking about that mindset of what could go wrong, and extending that challenge to ourselves to some extent about the ecosystem we all operate in, and how we need to be thinking about that for our resilience planning. So we'll do quick introductions around the room in a moment, and then I've got a few slides just to kick off the conversation. As with all of these sessions, it's not slide heavy. I've just got some ideas that I've pulled together, and then really want to hear from everyone else on the call in terms of your experiences of these kind of events and what you think we can all learn from them. So welcome and introductions, and then we'll talk about, as I say, resilience is all around that mindset. How do we kind of think differently, and how do we challenge ourselves to anticipate different events? And then we'll close out the session. Introductions. Those of you that are regular attendees, and it's great to see those of you on this session, will know that I always show my dog as part of his introduction. He likes to say hello. He isn't here today. He is at daycare, but as you can see, the format for introductions is really just who are you, where do you work, and is there anything particular you're looking to get from today, or just to get an understanding of the audience we've got. I will throw open the floor to whoever would like to kick off an introductions.
I'll start. Get in there quick. So I'm Sandra, role business continuity consultant. I'm not working at the moment. I'm just doing some studying and training to get my GP CBCI GP7. I've got the other one, of course. I just need to upgrade to the new one because I'd like to eventually teach business continuity. I'm part of the BCI Midland chapter. I'm a committee member there, so I do some work for them. And I love plants. I've just started getting into outdoor gardening now, so one of my sins, that's another challenge. But yeah, that's it really.
Thanks, Sandra.
I'll go next if you like, because I can follow on with the plants, which is why Helen grinned. Is anyone else as a gardener? That's good. We're on the right group. So I'm Jo. I work at PA Consulting, used to work with Helen, have been doing business continuity resilience since 1990, and just love coming to these sorts of forums to talk to people with a similar mindset. I also do garden design in my spare time because I only work a few days a week. That's me.
Can I
I'm.
go on?
Oh, no, I insist. I was just, Daryl, you go first.
Thank you. I was just going to say on the gardening theme, I'm currently in Lithuania, but before I left, I tied up my garden and filled 3 bags full of weeds and all the things that have been growing madly in the start of spring. So yeah, I appreciate the pain of gardening this time of year. I've also got a couple of dogs, one with muddy paws a lot. So yeah, I appreciate the daycare thing. But I run a company called Kaizen and Joy. We're a consultancy. We do business transformation, digital transformation, and a lot of startup support. And I often work with leaders that struggle with this whole concept of resilience and continuity. So it's good to be part of this community.
I'm Eilish McGuinness. I'm a consultant. I've been doing business continuity and operation resilience now for a long time, since the early 90s. And yeah, working with several organizations, and kind of some key things. I think the main thing really is the engagement and working much closer with risk. And secondly, looking at kind of operational resilience and moving that and working on that as in from an organizational resilience perspective. As we're talking about gardening and dogs, I can kill anything. If you can give me any plant and you can say there's no way that you could kill that, that will survive. Even years after you're dead, that will survive. Not a hope in hell. Just dies. I don't know what I do. I believe I overlove them. So that's it. And also, I'm completely terrified of dogs. There would be an Ailish shaped hole in the wall if the dog came near me. My daughter has gotten a dog, and I'm at the edge of the couch, and it knows very well not to come near me. Not that I would hurt it or anything. I mean, I would go ballistic if anybody hurted an animal. But yeah, I'm completely terrified of them. So yeah.
Keep all dogs away from you, Ailish, promise.
Yeah. Well, the 4-legged ones anyway.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Everyone else who would like to, Martinus, would you like to just introduce yourself?
Good afternoon. I'm Martinez Bimont. I am in South Africa, and after 35 odd years of time in the electricity industry, mostly in risk management, I now started my consultancy in risk management. We're the owners of 4 dogs, 2 huge ones and 2 small ones, and 5 cats.
That's a house full. Thanks. Claire?
Hi everyone. I'm not the only one in the car then. I suppose I sound like the new girl. I've been in emergency planning kind of world for about 15 years, but I've been doing business continuity for the last 3. And I work for Northumberland County Council, so local government up in the northeast of England. I'm here, I guess, just to kind of kind of reach out to the community to see what I can learn from everybody else. It's really fascinating kind of subject to work in. I do have a dog. She's very small, but she's well behaved, very cute. And we used to have cats as well, so like animals. Not so much the garden though.
Brilliant. Thanks, Claire. Michael?
Oh, hi there. Yeah, Mike Hill. I currently work in the utilities industry. I've been involved in continuity for about 30 years, various shapes and sizes, and I don't have a dog.
Okay, thanks, Michael. And Jill? We're just doing quick introductions if you are able to say hello. Jill, can you hear me? Okay, never mind. Oh, no worries, Jill. Jill, it's all good. Right, okay, we'll get started, Jill. Don't worry if you can't get the audio to work. Hopefully you can hear us. Perfect. Okay, so as I say, what I was just going to do, I've got a few slides just to talk about kind of the topics around, you know, this whole element, which I believe is really important, about the right mindset. And I guess coming out of the recent events that we've seen, and it's not just Heathrow, it's sort of the power outages that happened in Spain and Portugal, and I guess just trying to push that, push us to think differently and to be a bit more challenging about how we think about risk and resilience, and move more to a culture of resilience. And really that's kind of what I was going to talk a bit more about today. So we'll talk about that as part of the few slides that I'm going to share. So I think where I've sort of come from on this is just sort of that reflection of, you know, and those of us that have done this for a long time, similar to Ailish and Joe, I've been, you know, doing resilience for a long time. Seen it in different guises, seen it in different organisations, and seen good examples of resilience and bad examples of resilience. The good examples of resilience are those organisations where they do just sort of tick it off. They do it because someone's asking them to do it, probably a regulator or maybe a board member, and just kind of just we have something in place. We maybe have the crisis plan, we maybe have the backup plan. So it's not that they haven't thought this through, but it's very fixed on an event happening, a specific event happening, fixed on a series of things happening in order. And the reality of the world that we operate within is that that's not how these things happen. Again, as we work in organisations, we often talk about the fact that you have to plan for lots of different events happening, possibly concurrently happening as well. So it's not about just having a plan that gives you critical activities, gives you the right people, gives you the locations you're going to work from. It's about how can you adapt and flex that depending on the situation and depending on what's happening. And I think that's really the theme I wanted to talk about today, was around the element of building adaptive mindsets and building resilience from that side, rather than just focusing on we've got the plan, we've got the checklist. And I guess the comfort factor that gives a lot of organisations, because it does make people feel very, you know, happy when they've gone through this process and they've got that plan. But most organisations then just move on, and they're not necessarily thinking about this day in, day out. And that's really, to me, the mindset that we want to try and get to. So again, really where I'm coming from is that how do you get organisations to think about what happens outside of the structure, and how do you get them to think about those scenarios we're not going to anticipate? If we were to look at Heathrow, and we're not going to go into the detail of that just because it's still evolving what happened there, and there's still a lot of question marks about really what the event happened. But there are lots of lots of people that are involved. A very quick look at the initial findings that was produced last week is how many different organisations need to work together, how many different organisations probably had elements of the plan, but were very maybe fixed on a particular scenario happening, not thinking about what can we pragmatically do if we lose power in a certain part of the airport, or if we lose certain parts of that power generation. So it's not to say that they hadn't gone through that, but the challenge is to say, how do we make sure that organisations are continuing to do that and are continuing to evolve their resilience practices and continuing to think beyond the conventional or the clearly evident events that could impact them. So to me, that's a little bit about that being a bit more creative. It should be talking about events that are realistic, but maybe there is a bit of creativeness within that. Are there certain things that we aren't really thinking about? Are there certain things that we need to challenge them to think differently about? And how do we think more about the outcome we want to get to rather than the way we're going to respond? Because to me, that again is the key focus that we should be addressing. Is we want organizations to be prepared. We want them to come out of these kind of disruptions positively. We want anyone affected by these kind of events to feel happy and good, but feel like they were treated well and feel like it was a good experience for them as best as possible. So there's a framework approach that I have kind of developed and I continue to work through with organizations around, again, how do they set this mindset, set themselves up for success in this kind of event? And a lot of it is around the right soft resilience skills that you need to build within an organization. This is not about the plan. This is not necessarily about the documentation. This is about that mindset, that feeling that sits underneath that kind of gets them to feel a bit more able to adjust and change as things go on. So it is, how do you get people to stay open? How do you get them to challenge? I spent the last couple of weeks teaching a aviation organizational resilience master's course, and one of the biggest things we talked about was that curiosity, continuous improvement, and like learning culture. So how do you get people to challenge, and how do you encourage challenge throughout an organization? Because that to me is a key point about, curiosity. How do we get people to say, the way we've done it isn't necessarily always the right way to do it? We want to keep challenging. We want to maybe change things. How do we get organizations and individuals able to change quickly? Again, we often get quite fixed in the way we approach things. People go through exercises, people go through documenting plans and like, okay, that's what we're going to do. And that becomes their support. But again, the scenario that they face when they do the scenario they think about when they're doing their plan, the scenario that the exercise talks about isn't what's going to happen in reality. So how do you get people to think flexibly, adaptably, but also feel like they're not on their own in dealing with that? Because again, this isn't something that any one person has to deal with. This is something where there are lots of individuals that are going to be working on this, and we need to get them all to work together collaboratively and collectively to do that. So this is the framework in terms of that mindset that I believe we need to be working towards. And coming out of that, really, I wanted to just kind of think about what do you think that means? So I've kind of given you, this is how I see resilience mindset. This is the key statements that I'd be focused on, and certainly the key statements I talk to clients about in terms of how they should be thinking and what we're trying to achieve in terms of putting resilience in place. But what does it mean for you? What are the 3 words that you would think about if you were to think about resilience? Because I think that helps again to build that explanation of what is this slightly nebulous and slightly ill-defined piece that we're talking about here, which is mindset and culture. A lot of organizations struggle to think about this because a lot of organizations, again, are doing business continuity and resilience perhaps because they need to do it. But to make this work going forward, they need to want to do it. And this is really where I'm coming from, because certainly for me, a big passion is how do you get organizations to continue to do this? As any individual going into any organization, as I've done many times, I'm going in there to set up processes. At some point, they shouldn't need me because they should have built the right mindset. And I think that's really what I'm talking about in terms of getting that challenge and getting this going forward, is that the right mindset helps us to deal with the unexpected events, helps us to be flexible when big events happen, and helps organizations to manage through those kind of things. So The last thing I wanted to talk about, and then I will open to get everyone else's view on this, and open to happy to discuss and be challenged in terms of the concept, was again, how do we do this? How do we achieve this? What are the kind of key elements to be thinking about? And I do think there is a point where you have to build the foundations. So whilst I would always, and if I ever meet any of you in person and have these conversations, you will always find me veering towards the softer side. I find that easier to talk about, and I believe it's a more important part of the process is build the culture. But process is important, and you have to build something to start with. So the foundations have to be put in place, which is around the planning. It is around the exercising, because that builds something, and it starts to build confidence. But as you do that, and as you go through testing, as you go through exercising, that's when I see the opportunity to then move into that adaptation, because that's when we do start to challenge our conceptions. We do start to challenge assumptions that sit within our planning, and it's a really good opportunity to say, have we got this right? Are there other options that we could follow? What else can we capture as part of our resilience planning to make organisations more able to continue to transform and thrive when disruption happens? So that's the sort of steps that I see as working, helping organisations to think about this. And it is about taking them through those different levels, because this is all about maturity as well. This is all about, some organisations need more time spent on the system, the way we do things, before you can move them into being a bit more adaptable. But again, I believe if you're doing this well and you're doing this in the right way, we should be moving them down this kind of spectrum to the point that they are able to embrace uncertainty, that the events that are the unforeseeable or unexpected events don't create so much disruption and don't derail as much as they do in some situations. So I open the floor. Does anyone have any thoughts, views? Sandra?
Hi, Helen. Yeah, totally agree with, I'll just put my camera on so you can see. I totally agree with what you're saying there. I think when you said about the mindset, I've sort of wrote down getting the right people in place for that. Those business continuity professionals, and once you have the right people in place, then training them, making sure they're trained and equipped to do their job, to know what they're doing, which helps build the culture. And as it says in the book, it's helping people. They're doing it from head to heart rather than just doing it because they have to. It's part of their job or side of desk thing. So I think, the mindset and those steps are important. One thing I did put in the chat, you may not have seen it, is God's, when you mentioned regarding those Heathrow and the different sections, people, companies involved, the question I asked, were they working, did they ever do a business continuity exercise together, or were they working in silos? I hope I spoke silos right. I'm terrible spelling, but were they doing it, because that's an important thing to do. If you're working with an third party or whoever it is, if you do the exercise together and everyone's on the same page and knows what to do when a situation, who to contact, communication, all that sort of thing. So that's just something I wondered if you may not know, but it's a question I raised.
Yeah, so I see your hand up, Darryl, but I just want to come up on a couple of points. First thing, Sandra, just because I was smiling when you talked about the Embracing Business Continuity chapter, so I helped write that chapter. So I'm very much, that's where you can see I come from. It's very much about that head to heart. It's 100%. The answer to your question about the collaborative testing or collaborative exercising, I don't have the full detail. I know that there will have been some elements of that because it is part and parcel of how airports work, and there are requirements for licensing of airports that means they have to do some of this cross-sector testing. But how often they do that, which parts of the organisations which organisations they do that with, I don't know that detail. So I think, and it's a really good point, because you're absolutely right. It's all very well individual organisations having a plan, but until you bring them together, you don't know where the cross sector assumptions are, you don't know where the gaps are, similarly to how we would do exercising with our own organisations. Daryl.
Thanks, Anna. I think it's triggered me to say something is on this slide it says about being the kind of leader who handles the unexpected with confidence. And having worked with many leadership teams, I don't think I could classify all leaders with that ability. And I also know from working with some really large companies that some of them have special teams they put together to deal with resilience and continuity issues. And it's made me think, should leaders of all teams think like some sports teams, in the sense that you would generally have, if you're going for growth and acceleration, then you probably have your offense team there. But in the case of planning and maybe even responding to incidents, that's when you want your defense team in place. And so perhaps even think about swapping out some of your leadership team and management team for those times, to make sure you get the right people in the room at the appropriate times. So just an open thought.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I'll let Ailish come in first and then come back to that, because I've many thoughts on that.
Thanks. You mentioned at the kind of the introductory around this, that when an incident occurs, a lot of the time it goes into response, and the organization forgets to determine, what do we want this to look like? People use a thing called strategic intent, or what do we want to get out of this? What is the objective? And this is where you've got to take your day-to-day way of leadership, of developing strategy, whatever, and use those skills, as well as the procedures and the processes and the frameworks for responding to an incident, but use those especially to determine what is it we want it to be. And that can be like, immediately we want to protect our customer data. Okay, that's it. That's whatever that might be. Or we in Heathrow Airport, the safety and welfare of everybody is essential. No flights are going out. It's going to annoy everybody, but we don't know what's going on. So that strategic intent, I see that being constantly missed when exercises happen. And as somebody who is, kind of facilitating an exercise, you want to let them to go on a little bit of a journey, but also bring them back every now and again. When I'm involved in an incident, it's easy to just jump in and say, right, what's our strategic intent? What are we going to do? Whatever the right time is, because that's what your strategic team is there for. Your gold team is to do that. The immediate operational response, it just happens. The fire alarm goes off. You leave the building. You don't ask your gold team to make a decision on whether you leave the building. And there's lots and lots of stuff like that. Cyber, we're just going to block all everything coming in, or some decisions that they can make that are just automatic. But that strategic intent needs to be defined quickly, and it can evolve as you get better intelligence. I think that is fundamental in establishing what that, and your comms, right? You should be communicating pretty much non-stop and honestly and open and whatever. But setting that strategic intent, which you touched on, Helen, at the beginning, is vital.
I think it's interesting what you said there, Ailish, because I think you're absolutely right. It's a lot. It's where organisations, I think, do get. I think the leadership sort of almost come back to the operational piece. They want to get involved in that, so they're not thinking strategy. They're not thinking about that, and it does end up then that there isn't that clear where are we getting to. And I guess almost picking on what you were saying, Daryl, it is about using the right skill set. Whether you talk about it from a defensive and defensive as a leadership, the part of the reason we spend as resilience professionals and as individuals, a number of us on this call have been in the role you talked about, Daryl, where we have been in resilience teams doing this for big organizations. And that's what we do. We work with all these different individuals to understand their skills, how they can best support the response, where they're best able to help with the operational side, the strategic side and use them appropriately. But I also I sort of smiled when you taught that, Eilish, because I've been in that facilitating role so many times where it is a struggle where people aren't doing that, because you want to guide them to do that without necessarily telling them to do that, because it's part and parcel of what they should be thinking automatically, which is very challenging to do as a facilitator. It's sort of that balance between, I know what the answer is, but you need to find it yourself. Yeah. Does anyone have any thoughts, or kind of, what were your 3 words coming out of this in terms of what resilience mindset means to you? Jo?
I had some of them with 2 words instead of 1 word, unless we can think of 1 word that says the same. So one of them was courage, and you had some of these on there. So you had confidence, but courage is slightly different, and this is something we were talking about yesterday, is the courage of leaders, whatever that leader is, because I also have a view on that, to make decisions based on the information you have at the time, and the courage to then alter those decisions based on the incoming information. Appropriate speed, which could probably be put into 1 word. So it's the appropriate speed of whatever it is. So you can say speed of decision making. Sometimes going too fast is a bad thing. So appropriate speed. And I call it running towards or leaning in. So and we'll have all seen this, some leaders that have this responsibility are not a run towards type of personality. You do need to, I think, have that is probably one of the main things of the resilience mindset. You need to be a run towards person. You see something happening and you go towards to help, rather than go off and find the business continuity plan that's sitting on the shelf and giving yourself an extra hour to read that. So it's not really 3 words.
Concepts, that's all good.
Yeah.
Yep. Claire?
I just echo what Jo said there. I was thinking about kind of being able to adapt and kind of having that creative mindset. But in order for that to flourish, you've got to have that kind of that background of psychological safety. You need to have that kind of environment within the organisation or within the room where you kind of want this work to happen. Sometimes people have lots of good ideas, but they won't come forward with them, and it's just making sure that everybody feels safe to put their input in.
Really good point. And again, that's where, when organisations are thinking a bit more about resilience mindset, they are providing that environment that encourages that and continues to encourage it. It's not just we said it once and then we listened to you, but actually we were just doing it because you gave us some feedback 1 year in your employee feedback that says you don't listen to us, so we tick in that box. It's that ongoing encouraging and providing that safe environment that people do feel like, if I say something, I'm not going to be penalised. Something will happen as a result of this, and I will see something happen. It becomes something that it's not just an opportunity for people to highlight a load of things and then is it just a big thing. I've seen some really good examples where people do that whole, you said, we did, active feedback. So, you gave us you said these 3 things, we did something about these 2, we didn't do something about this one because actually that's not financially viable, or that would require us to completely restructure the whole organisation or something like that, but gives some good reasons as to why maybe some decisions are taken and some aren't taken, and also gives everyone in the organisation an opportunity to see decision making during during non-crisis events, and see how decisions are made and see how they can influence those, which again reflects then in a crisis or in a disruption, because actually you feel at that point you can still give your view and add that into the conversation.
Yeah. I think as well, it kind of, I've heard the phrase fail fast. So kind of when you're in that creative space, your first thought is not necessarily going to be the solution that you're looking for, but you need to identify that quickly and kind of, still have people coming back with more suggestions and know that that's okay.
It's a really good thought as part of this as well. Definitely. Yeah. Anyone else have any other thoughts coming out of the discussion?
Actually, I do. Can y'all hear me now?
Yes, we can, Jill.
Oh, yay, hello. And I apologize for that. And quickly, yes, I have 2 dogs. I have a little Pomeranian. She's adorable. And then we rescued one from a hurricane flood situation here from Mississippi. And his name is Mitch Ream, social entrepreneur. He's hilarious, but he's the best behaved dog. And I can't imagine anybody not giving him a wonderful home. So we're delighted to have him. But anyway, with respects to the ideas, I really like the idea of open-mindedness that taking suggestions from all people without penalizing or anything like that, or talking it down to say, oh, that's a good thought, maybe we can incorporate it, or just saying, that's something to table. I think that's always a good idea. But also not looking to blame people, pinpoint what went wrong, but also, being positive, hey, this happened, let's grow from that. And I think my final word would be tenacity. Listen, this happened, it's really bad, but we're not going to stop until we find a positive solution, if not a growth or opportunity. And so I think tenacity would be the one major thing I'd want to see out of leadership.
Absolutely, I agree. Yeah, wholeheartedly with all those. They're really good phrases to describe what we're trying to get to in terms of that right mindset. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, tenacity was the word I was struggling to think of. I was thinking about durable and all these kind of things, but tenacity is the word.
That's
Yeah.
or
tenacious.
Yeah. They're brilliant, even better. Amira, I saw you put your hand up. Did you want to?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm misclicked the button, but thank you for the opportunity. Maybe for enriching the discussion, I want to add some perspective from newbie like me, because you've mentioned before the resilient mindset, and I think it's an honor to be here to have an insightful discussion with expert like you. And I think for newbie like me, it is important to highlight the curiosity and the ability to continue learning. And I think that's can be the foundation for me to move forward and keep growing in this industry. And I think to enrich the discussion, I want to add that point from my perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Amira. The curiosity thing for me is one of the big things, and I think from both sides, because I often, when I talk about the job I do and why I do it, I do come back to I'm quite nosy. I like businesses. I like to know about businesses, and I'm lucky because actually doing this job means I get to be nosy. I get to be curious. I get to ask questions that most other people don't get that opportunity to ask, and people want to answer those questions usually. So you have that opportunity to be curious, and I think it's a really important skill both from a resilience professional and from individuals dealing with responses, is something we need them to continue to be curious, because it's about challenging the status quo, and it's about asking those questions that people maybe don't want you to ask, and might make them feel a bit uncomfortable, but will help improve responses and will make our response to events much more seamless, ideally, or hopefully. Okay, so we are at time, so I just wanted to wrap things up and thank you everyone for coming today. I did just want to highlight a couple of things. I have launched a podcast. It is now available on Spotify and Apple and YouTube. So alongside these events, that is now coming out. And our next session in June, we will have Sarah Henderson, who is a regular attendee at these sessions, talking about crisis communications. So that will be a really good session for everyone to come and listen into. Thank you everyone for your time today. Really great to see everybody, and appreciate all your time.
Thank you, Helen. This is really good. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everyone. See you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.